Did you know that 6 out of the world's 10 fastest-growing economies in 2020 were in Africa? Quite a surprising fact, isn't it? These countries, namely Ghana, South Sudan, Libya, Ethiopia, Côte d'Ivoire, and Djibouti, were the economic powerhouses of the continent, demonstrating rapid growth and resilience. This growth was not an overnight phenomenon, but rather a result of years of strategic planning, policymaking, and execution. Intrigued? Let's delve deeper into the chronological growth of these African powerhouses. To understand the present, we must travel back in time. Let's begin in the 1960s, the era of African independence. The 1960s were a pivotal time for Africa, a period marked by the end of colonial rule and the dawn of self-governance. As nations across the continent waved goodbye to their colonial past, they embarked on a journey of economic self-discovery, each with its unique set of challenges and opportunities. Post-colonial Africa was a landscape of economic diversity. From the mineral-rich southern region to the fertile lands of the east and the vast Sahara Desert of the north, the continent's economies were as varied as its geography. Yet, they shared common challenges. Infrastructure was inadequate, education systems were underdeveloped, and political instability was rampant. Despite these challenges, the newly independent nations were hopeful. They had vast, untapped resources, a young and growing population, and a burning desire to grow. And grow they did. From the late 1960s to the 1980s, Africa experienced an economic expansion. Infrastructure improved, industries were established, and cities began to grow. But it was not a smooth journey. The growth was often uneven, and many nations struggled with economic mismanagement, corruption, and political instability. The optimism of the early years slowly gave way to frustration as the promise of independence failed to translate into widespread prosperity. Yet, these early years were crucial. They laid the foundation for what was to come. The lessons learned, the mistakes made, they all contributed to shaping the future of these nascent economies. The struggles of the early years instilled a resilience that would serve these nations well in the years to come. As we close this chapter and look towards the 1990s, it's important to remember that the story of Africa's economic growth is not just about numbers. It's a story of people, of communities, of nations finding their footing in an increasingly interconnected world. The 1960s set the stage, but the real growth story begins in the 1990s. Fast forward to the 1990s, a decade marked by economic liberalization and increased foreign investment in Africa. The 1990s were a turning point for many African economies. This era was characterized by a wave of economic liberalization, which essentially meant a shift towards free market capitalism. Many African governments, encouraged by global institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, started implementing economic reforms. These included reducing state intervention, promoting private sector development, and encouraging competition. The effects of these policies were transformative. They helped to increase economic efficiency, foster innovation, and stimulate growth. As a result, many African economies began to experience higher rates of economic growth than they had in the previous decades. But let's not forget about the role of foreign investment. During the 1990s, Africa became a more attractive destination for foreign investors. They were drawn by the continent's vast natural resources, expanding markets, and improving business environments. Foreign investment played a significant role in driving economic growth. It provided much-needed capital for development, facilitated technology transfer, and created jobs. Some of the industries that benefited the most from foreign investment during this period included mining, telecommunications, and manufacturing. For instance, the mining industry saw substantial growth due to increased investment in mineral exploration and extraction. The telecommunications sector also experienced a boom, with the arrival of mobile phones and internet services. Meanwhile, the manufacturing sector started to diversify and expand, contributing to a rise in exports. However, the 1990s boom was not without its challenges. Economic liberalization led to a widening income gap in some countries, and the influx of foreign investment sometimes resulted in environmental degradation. Despite these issues, the overall impact of the 1990s boom was positive. It helped to lay the foundation for Africa's future economic success. The 1990s set the stage for the unprecedented growth we see today. The 21st century has been a period of exponential growth for many African economies. As we turn the pages of this century, we see a narrative of growth and development in Africa that is truly inspiring. Let's take a moment to revisit the progress of the 6 African nations we mentioned earlier. Beginning with Ethiopia, the land of origins, we can see an economy that has consistently grown at an annual rate of about 7%. This is largely due to its focus on agriculture and industry, which has been bolstered by significant infrastructure development. Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, has seen its GDP more than double since the turn of the century. The growth is primarily driven by the oil sector, but a burgeoning tech industry and a rise in entrepreneurship have also played a significant role. In Rwanda, the country's commitment to technological advancement and digital literacy has fueled an impressive annual growth rate of around 6%. The small East African nation has become a model for digital innovation and economic transformation. Côte d'Ivoire, Kenya, and Tanzania, too, have experienced significant economic growth. This has been spurred on by increased education levels, infrastructure development, and a focus on key sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, and services. It's important to note that this growth hasn't happened in a vacuum. It's been facilitated by a combination of factors including technological advancements, infrastructure development, and increased education levels. Technology, in particular, has been a game changer. From mobile banking revolutionizing financial inclusion to the use of technology in agriculture and health, it's clear that the digital revolution has had a significant impact on these economies. Infrastructure development has also played a crucial role. Improved roads, ports, and energy supply have not only facilitated trade but also attracted investment. Lastly, education has been a key driving force. With higher levels of education, people have been able to acquire skills that are relevant in today's global economy, spurring innovation and entrepreneurship. The growth story of Africa is far from over. Let's look at what the future holds. As we look to the future, the prospects for African economies remain bright. The continent, rich in human and natural resources, is expected to continue its upward trajectory into the next decade and beyond. The World Bank predicts that nearly half of the world's fastest-growing economies will be in Africa by the turn of the next decade. Several factors are driving this optimism. Key among them is the demographic dividend. Africa is home to the world's youngest population, a dynamic workforce that is expected to drive innovation and economic growth. Coupled with increasing urbanization and an expanding middle class, this demographic shift presents immense opportunities for businesses and investors alike. Technological advancements and digital transformation are also playing a significant role in shaping the future of Africa's economies. From fintech solutions addressing financial inclusion to e-commerce platforms revolutionizing retail, technology is unlocking new opportunities and disrupting traditional sectors across the continent. But the road to prosperity is not without its challenges. Infrastructure development remains a pressing issue, with the need for improved transportation, energy, and telecommunications systems. Climate change also presents a significant threat, with increased frequency and severity of droughts and floods impacting agricultural productivity and food security. Additionally, political stability and good governance are crucial for sustainable economic growth. It's imperative for African nations to foster an environment conducive to business, where corruption is minimized and transparency and accountability are upheld. Despite these hurdles, African economies are demonstrating resilience and adaptability. They are leveraging their strengths, learning from past experiences, and harnessing the power of innovation to navigate their economic future. And let's not forget the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is set to boost intra-African trade, stimulate industrialization, and create jobs. This landmark agreement signifies a collective commitment to a united and prosperous Africa. Indeed, the future of Africa's economies is a story still being written. It is a narrative of hope and potential, of challenges met with resilience, and of a continent on the rise. There's much to look forward to as we watch this story unfold in the years to come. We've traveled from the 1960s to the present, witnessing the remarkable growth of African economies. Think back to the surprising fact we started with. Africa, the cradle of civilization, has now emerged as an economic powerhouse. It's a story that began with humble origins, with nations finding their footing post-independence. These early beginnings laid the groundwork for a future that no one could have predicted. Then came the 1990s, a decade that brought a boom like no other. Africa was no longer on the sidelines. It was a player on the global stage, contributing to world markets and making its presence felt. This boom was not a fluke but a testament to the resilience and determination of the African nations. As we stepped into the 21st century, African economies continued to surge. This was not a mere continuation of the past, but a surge fueled by innovation, technological advancements, and a young, dynamic workforce. The surge is still ongoing, transforming the continent into a land of opportunity and promise. And finally, we looked at the future of African economies, a future that is as exciting as it is challenging. A future that holds the potential for Africa to lead the world in various sectors, from technology to agriculture, from manufacturing to services. As the story of Africa's economic growth continues to unfold, one thing remains clear: Africa's economic potential is vast and untapped. The journey is far from over. In fact, it's just beginning.